Hey gang, June, halfway through the year. I'm not on my normal chair. I'm on the chair I normally sit in to record these. Broke the other day. It buckled under my obese frame, and so now I'm sitting on I think it's called a makeup chair. Came with the house. The previous owners left it. It's like a stool, horribly uncomfortable. I'm sitting on a couch cushion. That might mitigate it, but that might inspire me to get through these a lot faster because I want to get the fuck up. But I watched a lot of great stuff this month. I watched a ton of stuff, ton of films and TV shows. I really need to get a life, I think. But, let's dive in. Mad Men. Finished my rewatch of Mad Men this month, and I absolutely loved it, to be honest. I loved it when I was a kid, when it was on. But there's so much subtlety and nuance and things that I wouldn't have picked up on back then, that I'm picking up on now and really appreciating. And the stuff I did like back then, the kind of zany humor, and the actors are all so great and also charismatic and lovable and charming, but also, like, just interesting. Like three-dimensional performances. I think a lot of them, like Jon Hamm and John Slattery and a bunch of these actors, have like a kind of an old-school movie star thing about them. Like Jon Hamm, especially when he's playing Don Draper, has this air of like a Cary Grant or a Clark Gable. Or, the show feels very much of its time. It feels like it's transporting you to the 60s. It's not just a bunch of modern-day actors on period sets in period costumes. Like, I feel like almost when you watch it, certainly the performances, you could be watching an actor from the 60s making a contemporary thing in the 60s, not an actor in the 2010s pretending it's the 60s. It's an absolutely incredible show, completely deserving of its place as one of the all-time greats, and it's impressive that it was like, at the time of peak TV, it was as captivating and as compelling as Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones. But it's just about a bunch of ad men in an office. It's not about that no one's getting killed every episode. People die every now and then from natural causes, or one by suicide. But there's no drug dealers gunning each other down in the street. There's no decapitations or people getting burned at the stake. It's just office politics. But they make that as riveting as the drug dealers shooting each other in the streets. Mountainhead. This was Jesse Armstrong's kind of made-for-TV movie, kind of his follow-up to Succession. It kind of feels like Succession light. Like it's got all the, the satire of the elite and the class divide and everything that Succession has. And that's all very sharp and very well observed. But the characters aren't nearly as three-dimensional as the characters in Succession. There's no one in this film who I cared about the way I care about Kendall Roy or Shiv or Roman or Tom Wamsgans. The actors are great. The cast is great. Steve Carell was hilarious in it. And Jason Schwartzman I love. And Rami Youssef. And the standout actually was the fourth guy, whose name I can't recall. I think it was Corey something. He was playing kind of like an Elon Musk guy who, like, the funniest part of his character to me is he just like Elon Musk, he kind of thinks he's hilarious and isn't, but he's surrounded himself with yes men who he pays to laugh at his jokes, and that makes him think he's hilarious. Like, I think literally like the first scene he's in, he's about to post a tweet. It's like fuck with 2 U's, and everyone's laughing, saying it's hilarious, and then one of the assistants says, "Hey, what if you had 3 U's?" And he goes, "No, I like 2." And the guy's, "Oh yeah, no, two's genius." And you can just imagine that's what it's like to work for Elon Musk. It's just him saying unfunny things, and you, to earn your bread, saying it's the funniest thing ever, and he's a comedic genius. So I thought that was all really, really funny. I thought the actor played that really well. And I was about halfway through the film, it becomes, they're all kind of conspire to kill Rami Youssef's character. And then it becomes this almost Weekend at Bernie's-esque farce. And that was very entertaining, and the actors played it hilariously, especially Steve Carell was really, really funny in those scenes, where he's like frustrated that this guy they're trying to kill isn't making it easy for them. It's like kicking up a fuss that they're gonna kill him, and that like annoys him. But the satire and the realism of it and the message of it really went off the rails in those scenes, and I kind of felt like they weren't facing enough consequences. The whole thing is they're at this mountain retreat while the world goes to shit. They've created this generative AI software that's being used to create really convincing deepfakes that's causing like acts of war and riots, and people are getting killed across the world, and they're facing no consequences for it, and I guess that's kind of realistic to a point, that they can get away with whatever the hell they want and will face no consequences. But I don't know, at a certain point you push people to a certain point. Look at the French Revolution. There's times throughout history where the rich people haven't been safe. They haven't been able to get away with it. And there was one point where they go to turn the taps on and there's no water coming out, and for a second I thought like, oh shit, something is actually going to go on, something is actually happening, they are in trouble, they're going to be attacked, and that would be amazing. But that never went anywhere. They're still perfectly safe in their little billionaire bubble. So I don't know, 3 out of 5 stars maybe, because it's as funny as Succession, but it's not as poignant a satire. It's not as you know, it doesn't get you to care about the characters, but it also doesn't have them face any kind of comeuppance. So it's kind of like either end of that spectrum. If you made me care, if you made me sympathize with them, great. The same way you did with Kendall, with Connor Roy, with Logan, and with Cousin Greg. That would be great. Or if you go the other way and just have they're horrible, awful people and they're about to face the music, also great. But it's kind of somewhere in the middle and it doesn't really work. Single white female. This was an interesting little psychological thriller, kind of a Fatal Attraction kind of, you know, obsession type thriller, where Bridget Fonda needs a roommate and Jennifer Jason Leigh moves in, and then Jennifer Jason Leigh starts to like act like Jane Fonda. She starts to like cut her hair like her and dress like her and becomes like dangerously obsessed with her, and I really enjoyed it. Like it got kind of goofy at times, but I was engaged, I was locked in. I really liked their performances. I thought Bridget Fonda did a great job as like the straight woman going like, what the fuck's going on? And Jennifer Jason Leigh was fantastic as this villain, as this like dangerously mentally unhinged psycho. You know, it was like pinnacle 90s psychological thriller. The Pope's Exorcist. This was the Russell Crowe plays the Pope's personal exorcist riding around on a scooter, and it was a fun role for him to sort of sink his teeth into, and I'm loving his kind of era now where he's doing weird stuff. But this was a bad movie. This wasn't scary at all. It was kind of, if anything, it worked almost as a comedy. It worked almost as like scary movie, but it was like unintentionally funny. It was unintentionally hilarious. I laughed out loud a handful of times. It uses every exorcism movie cliche in the book, you know, with this bit where a crucifix is turned upside down and the kid who's possessed teases the exorcist with personal information about his life. But it was just like when you see Regan McNeil possessed in The Exorcist, it's terrifying because you actually believe that's a kid and there's a demon who taken over her body. But in this, it was like a kid with the voice of Ralph Ineson, Finchy from The Office. So it was just silly. It was just funny. It wasn't scary at all. Poker Face Season 2. I've been reviewing this week to week, which I'll put links to my reviews in the description. I've been enjoying this season so far. Hasn't been consistently fantastic. There's been a couple of so-so episodes, but on the whole, I've been really, really liking it. There's been some really good ones. There was the one at the school with the kids. Those child actors were amazing. The one playing the kid who accidentally killed the gerbil, and the one who played the crazy girl who put the gerbil in there to be killed, were both incredible at playing their roles. And the one with Lauren Tom and Awkwafina play like a grandmother and granddaughter living in this amazing New York penthouse apartment. And then Alia Shawkat comes in and reawakens the grandma's sexuality and is like, becomes her girlfriend and moves in, and they're having sex all the time, making the granddaughter really uncomfortable. And that was, honestly, if those three characters and that setup, those actors were a show of their own, if that was a sitcom of Lauren Tom and Awkwafina as grandmother and granddaughter, and Alia Shawkat moves in and fucks the grandma all day, every day, and makes Awkwafina really uncomfortable, I would watch that show. I would binge watch that show in a heartbeat. But yeah, you know, Natasha Lyonne continues to delight, and I love how there's a couple of things where they're playing a bit with the formula, where they give Charlie a partner later on in the season, which was interesting. And, you know, there's just great guest actors in every single episode. John Cho was great in it as a con man. Method Man had a great guest performance. It's a really good show. Rick and Morty Season 8, I've been watching this also through some early screeners to cover it week by week. And it's been like the last few seasons. It's kind of hit and miss, but I think it's been mostly hits. I really like the Easter episode where Jerry turns into the Easter Bunny. That was a good one. And the kind of like Snowpiercer Mickey 17 episode where they're on a spaceship where there's the makeys and the takeys, like the haves and have-nots, where there's the rich, affluent people who live in luxury, and then there's like the workers who they exploit and who have compliance chips in the back of their heads, and if they mention anything about unionizing or getting paid more, they get an electric shock to keep them in line. And that whole thing was such a great sci-fi metaphor for like the class system, like the two-tier system of society, and the way the whole thing devolved into like an intergalactic parody of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World was just so much fun. I love that one. That might have been my favorite one of this season so far. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. All the Mission Impossibles came to Disney Plus, and Rogue Nation I always kind of remember being a bit of a disappointment because it was on the back of Ghost Protocol, so it had so much to live up to. And it's a really good movie, but it's, the opening stunt of Tom Cruise hanging off a plane as it takes off is as great as it gets. That's the best stunt in the movie, and it never gets any better than that. And so it's the one I rewatched the least, because I remembered it being kind of underwhelming, but it is kind of great though. I watched it again, and the action is amazing, and it's not just the opening plane stunt. There's like an incredible motorcycle chase. There's the bit where Tom Cruise goes into the underwater servers to steal a hard drive or something, and there's some really great sequences in it. The third act is very underwhelming because there's no big stunt in it, and there's not even really a big action scene. It's a showdown, it's a conversation really, and then he sort of tricks the bad guy into walking into a cage. So that whole sequence is a huge letdown after you've had, Tom Cruise whizzing around a mountain on a motorcycle with explosions, and he's underwater and he can't breathe, and he's hanging off a plane as it takes off, to then have him talk to the bad guy through Benji at a cafe as the final climactic sequence is a bit disappointing. But overall, it's a really good movie. I think it lives up to Ghost Protocol, and maybe not necessarily Fallout. Fallout is the best one. Fallout's the masterpiece. But maybe if I'm ranking them, I'd go like Fallout is the best, Ghost Protocol second, and Rogue Nation third. And then I don't know where we'd go from there. I'd have to really seriously consider that. Dogma came back to cinemas in the US for the it says 25th anniversary, but I think it's the 26th or pushing the 26th. But Kevin Smith only just got the rights back from Miramax after his joke was like, my film about God is owned by the devil, because it was owned by Harvey Weinstein. They finally got it back and he took it on tour, and it didn't come to cinemas here in the UK, but because it was coming back to cinemas, on Screen Rant we did a retrospective review, and I really enjoyed revisiting it. I gave it a very positive review. I think maybe 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, because it's everything you want from a Kevin Smith movie. It's raunchy and bawdy and lots of pop culture references and Jay and Silent Bob and very wacky and irreverent, but it's also this really interesting meditation on religion. I think it's like Kevin Smith's most important film and his smartest film, and that's not saying much because he's the guy who did Yoga Hosers and Tusk and shit, but it's a really kind of contemplative it's a very well-informed breakdown of religion. It was called Blasphemous, and he got death threats, and there was like church people protesting the film, but it's not anti-religion, it's not anti-Christian at all. It's pro-faith and pro-God. It's anti the institutions, it's anti the human beings who twist the teachings and try and do things in the name of Jesus that Jesus wouldn't agree with in a million years, which it's interesting it's coming back now, because it's, in America there's so many conservative politicians who do abhorrent things in the name of quote-unquote Christian values, and this movie is saying, like, that's not what Christian values are. This is what Christian values are. It's love for all people. It's an amazing cast. Like, they had Matt Damon and Ben Affleck right off the heels of Good Will Hunting, Alanis Morissette as God, Chris Rock as he was exploding as a superstar, George Carlin as Cardinal Glick, like the world's most famous atheist playing a cardinal. Alan Rickman, of course, is the standout as Metatron, the voice of God, so dry and deadpan and just really, really funny. And I think it was the same year he'd done Galaxy Quest, and he's got the same great thing in there where it's so dry and so funny. So it was very fun to revisit Dogma. I think nothing will ever replace Life of Brian as cinema's greatest religious satire, but I think Dogma is a really close second. Or Four Lions. Maybe Four Lions is second and Dogma's third, or they both tie for second. From the world of John Wick, Ballerina. I did a review of this one, so you can check that out, but I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was, it seemed like it would be a disaster based on all the kind of the behind the scenes problems, and it's switching hands between directors and going through a year of reshoots, but I like the story of it, that she's going after this cult and they've kidnapped a kid and she's got to get the kid back, and very Resident Evil 4, and the action was incredible. I got the sense that they just added a bunch of new action scenes. Chad Stahelski came in to bring some of that John Wickian flair. There's so much good stuff in it, like the bit where she's in a kitchen having a fight and they knock over the dishwashing rack. Her and this like waitress are smashing each other over the head with plates for like 5 minutes. That was the kind of like Buster Keaton slapstick violence that made John Wick so much fun, and it brought some of that to Ballerina. But I really liked that. I'm worried it hasn't done as well enough at the box office to get a sequel, but I loved Ana de Armas' character. I loved Eve, and I'd love to see more of her. I'd love to see her on another crazy adventure, and the end of this movie seems to set up a cool sequel where she would go full John Wick, and I really want to see that. Predator Killer of Killers. This was came to Disney Plus / Hulu, I think, elsewhere. Where it's like an animated anthology where you see the Predator throughout history. You see the Predator in Viking times and in World War II and feudal Japan, and they were all great stories, all three of them, and they're their own interesting little version of the Predator story. Because I would imagine the toughest thing with making a Predator movie is how are we going to find a new way for a human to kill a predator? And in this film, they do it 3 times, and in three completely different ways. And it just gave me even more faith. Dan Trachtenberg absolutely knows what he's doing with this property, and I can't wait to see Predator Badlands. Because it's almost like this is like the starter, and that's going to be like the main course. And this is amazing already. If this was the only Predator movie he was making all year, it would be very satisfying. But it's like, this is just the starter course. Like, the real thing is in November on the big screen. John Wick. After watching Ballerina, rewatched the original John Wick. And it's just, how much more is there to say about this that hasn't already been said? But it's such a beautifully... The story is simple. It's his dog was killed and he wants revenge, but the execution is so wonderfully elaborate. Fucking hell. The execution is, very complex and very, like, the best stunt people in the world being let loose to make the stunts the star of the movie. And Keanu Reeves throwing himself into the physicality of it. And it was just a complete game changer. As much as I like Ballerina, that first John Wick is just a masterpiece in a league of its own. From the world of John Wick, Ballerina. I rewatched Ballerina. I went with my dad this time. And it was funny because, like, he can stomach almost any, violence and gore and stuff. But there's a bit in the third act where she gets into this flamethrower fight where she's got a flamethrower, she's burning people, and then another guy comes at her with a flamethrower, and like 10 or 15 stunt people all get burned and they're running around on fire. And he had a really tough time watching that. He was like, that's the worst thing, to see someone on fire, because like to be burned alive probably is like the worst way to go, or definitely in like the top 5. Christ almighty, fuck me. Fucking hell. What the fuck is in the air? Do I have hay fever all of a sudden? Holy shit. Okay, I think we're all done. Yeah, obviously the stunt people are in like flame retardant, safety, whatever. But you're still watching human beings on fire. Heretic. I missed this one in cinemas and came to Amazon Prime, I think. And I liked it. Like, I really liked Hugh Grant's performance. And I liked the two Sophie Thatcher and the other one who played the Mormon missionaries. And it was an interesting setup for a horror movie where it's almost dialogue based. It's like people in a room talking. And Hugh Grant, I'm loving it. Like Russell Crowe, he's gone through an era where he's just doing weird shit, and playing this creepy horror villain was like the perfect next step. But he sets up, they're trapped in his house. They have no signal. He's got like lead in the ceiling or something that means they have no phone signal. So they're stuck with him, and he gives them 2 doors to go through that'll apparently allow them to leave. And one is the faith door and one is the not faith door, and he's going to try and convince them to give up on their faith in God. And that was an interesting setup for like the first half an hour, but once you've seen what's behind both the doors, which is behind both of them, they both lead to the same dungeon in the basement, all the intrigue is gone. It just becomes another girls trapped in a basement movie, whereas it started off as this interesting theological study through horror. But I still enjoyed it. The performances were fantastic, and it kind of reminded me of Misery, where you've got these girls are trapped at this guy's house, and it keeps cutting back to Topher Grace as their boss, or whatever you'd call it in the church. Like the sheriff you see in Misery, where it's slowly piecing together the clues of where they might be to go and help him. You've got like that B story going on where you're like, please just come and fucking save them. But it was overall, I guess it was kind of a disappointment, because it was great right up until you see behind those doors and the mystery goes pissed out the window. Mean Girls. I loved Mean Girls as a kid. I watched it 1,000 times, and I hadn't seen it in a few years, but I watched it again, and it still holds up. It's still hilarious. Tim Meadows as the headmaster, I think, is the standout for me. That he, like, when there's like a riot at the school, he comes out with a tank top and a baseball bat, like, that he's this mild-mannered high school headmaster, but you get this hint of a backstory where he was like a streetwise badass, and Tim Meadows plays that really, really well. And I mean, everyone's great. Lindsay Lohan and Lizzie Kaplan and Rachel McAdams as Regina George, and it's just a really funny movie, really funny script by Tina Fey. It's a classic. Shrek 2. My sister finished her exams and unwound by watching Shrek 2, which is like Shrek 1 and 2 are like when we were little, when she was a baby, she wore out the Shrek VHS. it like became unusable because she just would watch it and rewind it and watch it again all day, every day. And we actually, about a year ago, went to the cinema to watch Shrek 2, and it was crazy because there was no one else there. It's like, I thought it would be packed. I thought we'd have a hard time getting seats, but it was just us, and it was fun because it was like, then we could, it was almost like a private screening just for us. But I can't believe no one else wanted to watch Shrek 2 on the big screen. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the great sequels. It's like Godfather 2, where it's like everything that's great about the first one, but bigger and takes more risks, and is just it's a perfect sequel. The Crow. I don't know if I'd even seen the original Crow. I'd definitely seen parts of it, and I might have seen it on TV or something like 10 years ago, but I didn't really remember much about it. I quite liked it. I mean, I thought, it's a great story, this kind of supernatural revenge story, where he goes through this horribly traumatic event and channels that rage through this dark spirit that's going to allow him to exact like superhuman vengeance, And I think the original writer of the original comic, it was like a response to a real traumatic event he'd been through. Like the creation of Eric Draven helped him to process going through something similar to what he goes through, and that made the whole thing even more powerful. Deep Cover. This is pretty good. It's like a comedy, action comedy. A couple of like 3 improv actors, Bryce Dallas Howard, Orlando Bloom, and Nate from Ted Lasso are all brought in for an undercover sting operation. They're supposed to just go in and buy some counterfeit cigarettes just to prove that the guy's selling them, but they end up like yes-anding their way into like the criminal underworld. And Paddy Considine is this like crime boss, and he kind of takes a shine to them, takes them under his wing, and they get deeper and deeper into this criminal world. I reviewed it. I'll put a link for that in the description. I got an early screener from Amazon, which it took a lot of faffing around. I mean, we had to follow up with so many people to get the link, and then to play it I had to change my settings in Google Chrome. I finally got it, and it was actually pretty funny. It's Orlando Bloom's hilarious in it because he's like this wannabe Marlon Brando, Daniel Day-Lewis figure, but all he gets auditions for is like adverts for frozen pizzas and erectile dysfunction pills. And so when he gets this opportunity to do this undercover thing, it's like the greatest acting opportunity in the world, and he really hams it up and digs into his backstory, and it's all so unnecessary. It's so funny. The plot is very predictable and very repetitive, and but the 3 of them kind of make up for it. They're really great together and really funny. The Assessment. I thought this was like a better version of Vivarium, where it's like in this dystopian future, resources are very scarce, and human couples are only allowed to have kids if they send an assessor to spend a week with them and see what they're like. And Alicia Vikander played the assessor, and she was fantastic. It's really creepy. Like, she'll watch them have sex, and she's like, pretend I'm not here, I need to observe everything. And then she starts acting like a petulant kid to see how they'll respond to a kid, and she's every little passive aggressive thing they do, she takes a note of it. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really great little dystopian thriller. It was like a Black Mirror episode. That's like the best way to describe it. This is one of the best Black Mirror episodes that isn't a Black Mirror episode. School of Rock, gone on record on this channel many times saying this is my favorite movie of all time, and I stand by that statement. And they showed it on the big screen. They showed it at the cinema. I went down with my sister and my mum, and I had an absolute blast. It's hilarious anyway. If you watch it at home alone, it's hilarious, but with an audience it was different. Like, you're laughing along at the jokes and the performances as an audience, and that was really fun. And there was like little background things that I'd never really noticed on a TV, but seeing it blown up on a huge screen, there's like little background jokes and things I'd never spotted before. It was an absolute blast. A Working Man. This is like a Jason Statham revenge movie, or his like boss's daughter is kidnapped and he goes after her, and it's like very typical Statham, where he's just like this gruff badass kicking and punching and shooting his way through legions of criminals. But it was it was fun. I mean, I wouldn't put it on the more memorable end of the spectrum of the Statham movies, but it's a solid entry in the canon, and he's always just a joy to watch. The Wrath of Becky is the sequel to Becky, the film with Kevin James and his friends. I can't remember exactly it was like a home invasion type thing, and this girl, Becky, this teenage girl, fights back and fucks up Kevin James and all his friends. And I watched it for Kevin James, because I like the idea of Kevin James as a villain in a horror movie. But then, like, obviously Becky's the star. She was fantastic in it. And this is the sequel where it's like picks up after that, where she's an orphan, she's on the run, and she runs afoul of some white supremacists who like kill her guardian and her dog, I think, or they kidnap the dog, nap the dog, and she tracks them down to their hideout and does the same thing again. She fucks fucks them all up one by one in really gruesome ways, and the directors, I think, got really creative with how she kills the neo-Nazis. You know, it's just a blast. The Accountant 2, this one came to Prime, and I remember liking The Accountant 1, but it came out like 10 years ago, and I hadn't seen it since then, so I didn't remember it that well. But Amazon they own the sequel, they made the sequel, but they didn't bother to get the rights to the first one. Like, surely you'd want people to be able to watch the first one, because then they'd be more inclined to watch the second one, unless they're getting greedy and thinking, if you really want to watch the second one, you'll buy the first one. But I thought, I'll wing it. I remember enough. And this one, you know, it's a very different beast. That one was a very calculated thriller, no pun intended. And this one is more of a big, brash, action blockbuster popcorn movie. And I loved the kind of buddy element. You know, John Bernthal as Ben Affleck's brother had kind of a small role in the first one, and in this one he's like the co-star. He's like, it's the buddy dynamic of the brothers, who they love each other, but they're so mismatched, where John Bernthal's character is so brash and outspoken and confident and socially adept, and Ben Affleck's character is like on the spectrum, kind of introverted, kind of awkward and shy, and not so, you know, socially inept. It was kind of a great story to have the John Bernthal character kind of bringing his brother out of his shell and kind of like helping him overcome some of his difficulties a bit. And I love Ben Affleck's performance as this character. I think it's a really cool idea to have like an autistic action hero where he struggles to make eye contact with people, but then also he'll pick up a gun and kill some human traffickers. You know, that's a cool conceit, and this is a cool movie. Bride Hard. This is another one I got a screener for. And it was tough because I was so grateful to them for sending me the screener and everything, and unlike with Amazon, there was no faffing around. But the movie was fucking awful. It's one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's the first rotten review I've ever since I got put on Rotten Tomatoes. I've given like kind of 6 out of 10 before, but they've all been fresh since I was put on Rotten Tomatoes a couple months ago. This is the first rotten review, and it was the most rottenest review you could possibly give. And when the other, you know, because when you get a screener for something, you review it, you don't know what other people are thinking, you don't know what the other critics are thinking until all their reviews come out when the embargo lifts. So when the embargo lifted, the first review I read was, I think, Variety, and they were being quite positive. They weren't like raving about it, but they were saying, you know, it's fun enough, it's interesting, it's entertaining. I was thinking, oh no, have I been too harsh on this? And then every other review I read, it was like, oh, I haven't been harsh enough. These people fucking eviscerated it. I think the Rotten Tomato score stands at like 10% or something. I think it's just that Variety review holding up the positive side. It was horrendous. It's Rebel Wilson plays like a maid of honor at a wedding, and she's a secret agent, James Bond figure, and mercenaries attack the wedding, and it's like Die Hard at a wedding. And it was awful. Like, Rebel Wilson is funny. She does the deadpan line deliveries very well, but she's not an action hero. She didn't convince me as an action hero for a single solitary moment. You know, we're supposed to believe she's this capable James Bond badass who can kill, 15 guys who have infiltrated this wedding. And I don't even believe she could land one good punch on any of them, to be honest with you. I think she would be killed instantly in real life. And the director, Simon West, is a great action director. He did Con Air. Con Air was his very first film. It's a masterpiece. And he did Expendables 2, like the best Expendables film. But he doesn't know comedy. He can't make comedy land. So the comedy moments are really awkward, and the jokes are horribly written. There's a bit where the mother of the bride comes over to Rebel Wilson, and it's like, oh, you're sitting here all alone. And Rebel Wilson goes, I'm not alone, I've got my emotional support boobs. And it's like the worst shit. You know, there's a bit of an explosion, and the bride goes, oh, at least my wedding is lit. And it's like, calm the fuck on. You can't possibly and that's supposed to be the big final laugh in the climax of the movie. There's like a couple of chuckles. Devine Joy Randolph is in it, hot off winning an Oscar for The Holdovers. She's like the wild card bridesmaid in this, and she gets a chuckle every time she's on screen. She kind of steals every scene she's in. Anna Schlumpsky from Veep is in it, and Steven Dorff is the Hans Gruber-esque villain, and he was great in it. There's a lot of great actors in it, but the script is just terribly unfunny. And you know, the main thing is you've got a director who knows action but not comedy, and a star who knows comedy but not action. And you need a director and star who can do comedy and action. And I think that I suggested in my review, I suggested a couple of examples where like a director who can do action and comedy would be like Edgar Wright or James Gunn or someone like that, and a star who can do action and comedy would be like Jennifer Lawrence or Sandra Bullock. But you've got an action director and a comedy star and a script that isn't good at either, and you've got a mess. The fucking movie sucks. I absolutely hated it, and I feel bad because they were so generous to send me the screener and send it in such a timely manner, and in their emails they've all been so very nice and gracious, but the movie is just terrible. It might end up, and we're only halfway through the year, it might end up being the worst film of 2025. Yes, worse than The Electric State, even. Apocalypse Now. I rewatched the masterpiece that is Apocalypse Now. One of my favorite films, a mind-blowing psychedelic odyssey through the Vietnam War. And I was doing a video, A Dummy's Guide to Apocalypse Now, and I had the biggest issues with copyright that I've had since I started the channel, where it was trying to like copyright flag like full like 7-minute chunks of the video, some of which didn't even have Apocalypse Now clips in them. So I got in touch with the claimant with Studio Canal and said, is there anything we could do? Can you not just give me permission for this one thing? And I don't even want money for it. I just want to have it out there. And we went back and forth for a bit, and they were very nice, but they eventually said no. So it's available in the US and Canada. So if you use a VPN to get to one of them, you can watch it. Or it's on Vimeo. There's a link to Vimeo. I did a post on the channel page. So whatever. I really liked the video. I was really proud of it. And it's a huge letdown that it's only available to like half my audience. But whatever, that's life. Sometimes you gotta bend over and get fucked. Manhattan is the Woody Allen movie. One of his best efforts, it's black and white, it's very classy, and it's very funny and a very well-observed kind of human romantic comedy about just people talking and going through these difficult relationships, and, it is also one of his most uncomfortable to watch because it's about, he's like a 40-year-old man in a relationship with like a 17-year-old girl. And that would be uncomfortable to watch under any circumstances, but like the fact that he would then go and marry his adopted daughter, the whole thing's got a stink of ick on it, And it reminds me of that Amy Schumer sketch where they watch these acclaimed films by these acclaimed directors, and it just makes them uncomfortable because it's about like a 60-year-old man going out with like a 22-year-old woman, and the age gap just gets more and more uncomfortable in every film. But it's very beautifully shot. The way it captures New York in black and white is, with George Gershwin on the soundtrack, is magnificent. My arse is killing me on this fucking stool, so I'm gonna stop for a second. I'll come back in a second, and we'll continue. And we're back. See how that works? It's like time travel. Alright, so my glutical muscles are adequately rested. Scooby-Doo, the live-action Scooby-Doo, which I really like. I mean, going back to when I was a kid, I would love to see the original R-rated version of it that James Gunn wrote, because there's references to, like, Shaggy and Scooby being stoners and stuff like that, and there's a couple of, like, adult references that are kind of, like, holdovers from an earlier draft, and it would be great to see a version of Scooby-Doo that leans into that, Like, I imagine that full-blown horror movie version of Scooby-Doo. But, I mean, honestly, there are parts of this that are really fucking scary. The bit where the possessed people are chasing down Shaggy and Scooby to that barn and they're smashing through the walls. They used to scare the fucking shit out of me when I was a kid. And the casting couldn't be more perfect. Like Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne, Linda Cardellini as Velma, and Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred. I couldn't imagine a more perfect live-action early 2000s cast for the Scooby Gang. Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. After I watched the first one, I rewatched the sequel, and I love the sequel too. I love the monsters in it, the tar guy and like the pterodactyl guy, and again, like, used to scare the shit out of me when I was a kid, but now I'm watching it and it is very, very well made and very atmospheric, but I wasn't genuinely scared the way when I was a kid. It was like I was watching Texas Chainsaw, whereas now I'm like, oh yeah, this is a horror film for kids. But it's a great kind of gateway into horror for a little kid to watch these live action Scooby-Doos. Never Let Go. This was interesting. It's like Halle Berry and her two sons are living in this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and she's telling them that she's keeping them there to protect them from this spirit called the Evil that's consumed the world and killed off everyone else. And if they have to stay tethered to the house, or the evil will get to them. But she's the only one who can see the evil. She's the only one who can see the demons coming after her. So it begs the question, is the evil real? Is society actually gone? Or are they just in the cabin in the middle of nowhere, everything else is fine, and she's just suffering these delusions? She's having hallucinations that she thinks is the evil. And like, the kids start to question it as well. So it becomes this interesting thing of like, when you're a kid, your parents want you to trust them, but you want to, it's natural curiosity, you question everything they say. And it's a very common thing for parents to tell a little white lie to their kids to keep them safe. Like, if you sit too close to the TV, you'll have square eyes. And this is like a grand horror version of that. And I thought it was a great atmosphere, really chilling atmosphere, and a great performance by Halle Berry as always. She was incredible in it, and and it kind of kept you guessing, like, whether or not the evil is real or a lie, And that was interesting to a point, but then it can't seem to pick a lane. It can't seem to decide definitively, is the evil real or not? So it kind of tries to have its cake and eat it too, and have it both ways, but I still really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed watching the film, and all the twists and turns were really unexpected, and and, you know, it's completely unpredictable. That was a great little horror film. Boys on the Side. I really enjoyed this. It's Whoopi Goldberg and Mary Louise Parker embark on this road trip. Drew Barrymore ends up joining them along the way, where they're helping her escape from her abusive boyfriend. The boyfriend dies accidentally, and so they're on the run from the law. And then Drew Barrymore meets Matthew McConaughey playing a cop, and they fall in love, but it's like, is he going to find out what they're running from? And that was a really interesting little drama. You know, all those actors are amazing, and they had great chemistry and had great characters to play, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's like, it shifts its focus a lot. Like, it's initially a road movie, and then it's, when they settle down, it becomes sort of a, you know, like a romantic drama, and then when it all unravels, it becomes a courtroom movie. But I thought, you know, each iteration of the movie I really enjoyed, and the characters are consistent throughout the whole thing, whatever genre they're kind of dipping their toes in. So I thought it was a great little film. The Dick Van Dyke Show. I've been rewatching The Dick Van Dyke Show, or parts of it. There's random episodes that aren't on Amazon Prime. Like, every 4 episodes, there'll be an episode you just can't watch. Which is bizarre, but like, I love the show. I loved it as a teenager. I watched it and was like, whoa, you can, like, his job is just to go in and write funny things with his friends and do bits with his friends. Then he goes home to his gorgeous wife and house. I could get into that. It didn't pan out like that, but it was a cool dream to have. And the writing of it is so sharp. And Dick Van Dyke is so funny. He's like, as a physical comedian, he's like Stan Laurel. He literally is like a reincarnation of Stan Laurel. And you know, he does it all. He does physical comedy. He does, his line deliveries and his timing are all just spot on. And every situation, like his facial reactions to each thing that happens is like, you know, he plays into the awkwardness of certain things. And it's so good. Such a good performance. And Mary Tyler Moore, I absolutely adore as his wife, Laura. They have like one of the healthiest marriages I've seen on a TV show. And it's from like the 60s. But they have a better marriage than most couples in TV shows today. Well, like when Rob fucks up, he'll listen to Laura and he'll apologize and he'll make things right, and the majority of the conflicts aren't between, there's like two kinds of, you gotta have conflict, but you can either have, you know, the husband versus the wife, us versus each other, like Ray and Deborah in Everybody Loves Raymond being the perfect example, where they're just constantly at each other's throats, never on the same page. Or you can have the conflict be us versus the world, you know, it's the husband and wife coming together to face a conflict together against some external force. And that's the Dick Van Dyke Show. Rob and Laura are always on the same page, and even when they're not, like, he's always, if they're having some sort of argument or falling out, or he's done something to upset her, he's always just trying to make up to her. And I loved watching that, you know, it's because you see so many like toxic relationships that they should just break up in TV shows. But they have a good marriage, Rob and Laura Petrie. Oregon Trail. This was, you know, billed as a horror western. It's kind of the pun alone of the title, play on the Oregon Trail, I thought was enough to take note of the film itself. And, you know, I did some Googling, and it was described as, what if Quentin Tarantino directed Little House on the Prairie? And I read that, I was like, fuck yeah, I need to watch this. That sounds amazing. And it doesn't live up to that at all. It plays it totally straight. You know, I don't even know why it's billed a horror western. There's some violence in it. But there's violence out there. There's violence in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's not a horror western. It's just a western with some blood. And I like the premise of it. It's almost like a western Kill Bill, where this gang of outlaws come in and murder this young woman's family, and then she goes after them to pick them off one by one. But she doesn't pick them off one by one. I can't even remember if she killed any of them. They have fallen out and start killing each other. And I think maybe one of them was killed by, one of them killed himself. He fired his gun into the air and then the bullet came down and hit him. I don't think she killed any of them. It's not a very satisfying revenge story. Bean. I rewatched the Mr. Bean movie. I love it so much. Like, just the concept of him going to Los Angeles and he's gotta, like, you know, help with the sale of this famous painting, Whistler's Mother, and he sneezes on it and he's trying to, like, wipe off the snot, and he wipes off the paint, and then he has to, like, draw a cartoon face on, and such an absurd comic scenario that Rowan Atkinson plays so well. And, like, Peter McNichol is such a great choice to be the straight man to Mr. Bean, because he's, like, a great actor, you know, Sophie's Choice. He's been in such amazing, like, dramas, but he also is, like, gets, like, in Veep, he's one of the funniest characters in Veep. So you get that guy, you get, like, a Sophie's Choice level dramatic actor who also completely gets comedy to be the straight man to Mr. Bean. It's comedy gold. Echo Valley. This was an interesting little thriller on Apple TV Plus, where Julianne Moore is this single mother to Sydney Sweeney, who's like a drug addict and only ever shows up when she wants money. Or one day she shows up covered in blood, and she had gotten into a fight with her boyfriend and she pushed him and he hit his head, and and she killed him. And then Julianne Moore goes and disposes of the body. And at that point, you know, it was an interesting look at like how far would you go for your kids? What would you do for your kids? Kids show up with a body you need to be disposed of. You might not want to do it, but you're gonna, okay, I'll help you. Let's get rid of this thing. And Julianne Moore obviously is fantastic, and Sydney Sweeney was great. But as you get to the twists of like, you know, not wanting to give anything away, but the story that is set up is built on a lot of misdirection and flat out lies, and so it becomes a totally different kind of story. And by about halfway through in its second half, it's no longer about what would a mother do for her daughter. It's a totally different thing, and that's not as interesting as that was. But, you know, Julianne Moore is fantastic. You know, I could watch a 2-hour film where she fills out tax returns and it would be riveting. So Perfect Days. This is a Wim Wenders movie set in Tokyo about a toilet cleaner. And that's the whole movie. A toilet cleaner goes about his day cleaning toilets. And along the way has these tiny little moments of human connection. And it's so beautiful. It was like one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. And it's a guy scrubbing toilets. It's just all these beautiful little moments. Like he'll find a lost child and try and reunite him with his parents. Or he gets into this game of noughts and crosses with this guy who left some paper in the toilet. And they back and forth play this game of noughts and crosses day by day. And it's just really powerful to see. Like, that's the power of the movies. Like, you don't need an alien who's going to blow up the world unless we get the kyber crystals. You just need an interesting guy, not even doing interesting things, just living life and experiencing life in the world. And through the lens of the camera, you'll see it picks up the beauty of life. It's like you point a camera at a guy scrubbing a public urinal, but it captures like the glance he shares with this woman who's having her lunch on a bench. And I don't know, it was so beautiful. Fantastic Four is the 2005 one. I rewatched it because I was doing a video about all the previous Fantastic Four films before the new one comes out. It turned out, I liked how it turned out. It was a good video. And, you know, I love this movie. It's very nostalgic for me because I was like 7 when it came out. And I was a huge Fantastic Four fan. I had action figures and comics and the video game. And so, like, rewatching it now, there's flaws, but I really enjoyed just revisiting, just being taken back to being that 7-year-old playing with a Michael Chiklis Thing action figure. Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. This was, I rewatched the sequel after the first one. That's another one I cover in the video, and you know, it was good. It's made out like it's one of the worst movies ever made, but it's pretty good. Galactus is a cloud, you know, but the Silver Surfer's amazing in it. Lawrence Fishburne and Doug Jones play the Silver Surfer amazingly, and the tone is perfect. It's lighthearted and comedic and fun, and you know, but has some gravitas to it. 28 years later, this came to cinemas, and it's been interesting to see the response. Like, so many people are focusing on the zombie nudity, the big swinging zombie dicks. To be fair, they are prominent in the film, but the discussion around the cocks is taken away from like what a great story this is and what a great film it is, and all the kind of innovative cinematic techniques it's using. But everyone's just talking about the penises, and like if I hear the phrase 28 inches later one more time, like people keep saying that like they're the first person to come up with it. I've heard that 100 times now, but whenever you hear it, it's like they think they've come up with it for the first time. It's like, 28 inches later because of penises, because of the Samson's big penis. But it's a great film. It's an interesting story about a dysfunctional family and, you know, memento mori, remember death. It has these powerful themes and ideas and messages buried in this intense, visceral, gruesome zombie film. There's one bit, like, there's so much shit in this. You know, the alphas rip off people's heads and pull out half their spine, and like there's a ton of gruesome stuff. The worst fucking part for me was when the big fat zombie is crawling through the woods and he slurps up a worm, and it's so sustained, and he's just, it's like, it's disgusting. Made my skin crawl. I brought some food in with me, and it put me off having the food. Didn't want to eat after watching a guy suck up a worm like a fucking strand of spaghetti. So that was the most horrific, disgusting thing for me. I watch heads get ripped off all fucking day and not bat an eye. Don't eat a fucking worm. But I'm really excited for the sequel. I'm excited to see where the sequel goes. After that ending, that was a total tonal shift, and people are saying like, what the hell? But that the movie we're watching is over, the story we're watching is over. That's the next one is starting with the Jimmies, and I'm very curious to see what the hell's going on with this Jimmy Savile thing. But I'm sure that'll all be covered in the next one. I think the next one seems like it'll be this anarchic, crazy, action-packed thing, and I can't wait to see what Nia DaCosta does with it, because I love her as a director, and she's a great choice for this. The Rehearsal season 2. I rewatched The Rehearsal latest season because I hadn't seen it. I binge watched it all in one go to review it on the screeners, and you know, so I had less time to kind of absorb it as people watching it week by week might have done. So I watched it again with my friend Harry. Came around and watched it with me, and he's an engineer, so he knows how planes work. So We actually have been on and off. We've been like co-writing a biopic of the Wright brothers together, which is, I think, could be a really great movie. But so yeah, he knows like the ins and outs and the technical stuff of the planes. So it was interesting to watch it with him, to watch this crazy experimental study in aviation safety. Elio, Pixar's Elio. Apparently, I'm the only person on Earth who watched this, but I did a review of it, so you can check that out. But I really liked it. It's a really heartwarming little story, little coming-of-age sci-fi story. And I love this kid. I love Elio as a character. He's, I enjoyed following his story, and it's, it's nothing we haven't seen before. It's themes and storylines that we've seen before, but it's still being done in a really poignant, powerful way. A formulaic movie done well can still be really touching, and this is. I mean, if you boil it down, there's only like 7 stories to begin with, and everything's just a variation on that. And if you put a variation on it that is engaging and moving and beautiful, I don't see a problem with the fact that it's supposedly formulaic and you've seen it before, because you haven't seen this version of it before. And Elio's fantastic. It should be a bigger hit. I don't know if it's marketing or there was no hype or whatever, but I think families will love this. This is 40. I rewatched This is 40 because it popped up on Netflix. Because one of my earliest videos was about This is 40, about how it's more of a horror film than a comedy, because it makes marriage look like this inescapable hell on earth. And I still stand by that. There's still some really uncomfortable moments in it, but there's really funny moments in it too. Chris O'Dowd and Melissa McCarthy and Albert Brooks and Megan Fox, of all people, all stand out as being really, really funny in it. 28 years later. I watched 28 Years Later again with my dad and my sister. She's done with her exams now, so she can start coming back to the cinema with us. And they had a great time with it too, and they also can't... It's like the discussion of zombie penises is detracting from the discussion of this beautiful story and these beautiful performances by Jodie Comer and Aaron Taylor-Johnson and Ralph Fiennes and Alfie Williams, I want to say his name is, playing the kid, Spike, he's the star of the movie, and he's fantastic. So yeah, it would be nice to see the discourse move on from 28 inches later, move on from Samson's giant cock, and just discuss the movie on its own actual merits of its narrative and themes. Strays. It's the movie where Will Ferrell plays a dog with an abusive owner, and he teams up with Jamie Foxx as another dog, and they're gonna go and track down this guy and bite his dick off. And they really went for it. Like, spoiler alert, I thought that he'd be talked out of it or he'd have a change of heart or something, but he literally bites his dick off. Like, the mid-credit scene is Will Forte's in hospital, and the doctor comes in and says, "We were unable to reattach the penis." So I really admired that they went for it. And there was a great gag where Josh Gad plays like what they call like a narrator dog. Like a dog with an internal monologue chronicling his owner's life, like A Dog's Purpose or The Art of Racing in the Rain. And that was a great, great parody of those films, because those films are so stupid and they are so ripe for parody. And that was the highlight of the film, that one scene. And outside of that, it's a pretty naff movie. It's fun enough, there's a couple of chuckles, but it's not as funny as you'd think an R-rated comedy about talking dogs would be. Subservience. This is like Megan Fox plays an evil android. This guy's wife is sick, so they bring her in as like the nanny and the housekeeper. And then he has an affair with the robot. And then she kind of like becomes like a robot fatal attraction where she wants to like usurp. She wants to get the wife out of there, and she wants to, take her place and usurp her. And it was all so dumb. I I went along for the ride and I kind of enjoyed it. Megan Fox is pretty good in it, but it was a pretty naff movie. I wanted to comment on the idea of like AI replacing workers. But this movie isn't smart enough to say anything substantial about that stuff. Grandma. I absolutely fucking love this movie. It was fantastic. It's Lily Tomlin as this old poet, washed up old has-been poet, and Julia Garner, the fantastic Julia Garner, I think pre-Ozark, is her granddaughter, and she comes over. She needs money for an abortion procedure, and the grandma doesn't have the $600 or whatever to pay for it, so they just spend the whole day driving around town, stopping by acquaintances and things, trying to collect this money. And along the way, they reconnect. They're kind of estranged, and they realize how much they have in common and how much they love each other. And it was just really sweet to see. And it was like a really feminist kind of movie. Like, the grandma is this old lesbian who had been like at the forefront of the women's liberation movement, and then her daughter, Julia Garner's mom, you see, is this like career-driven. She's like the product of the liberation movement. And then Julia Garner's generation is, she's the modern woman who's very independent, but doesn't have any concept of the battle that had to happen for her to have that independence. She's just living in that world. And so it's kind of like through these 3 generations of women. I don't know, I think it was written and directed by a man, but it felt like this really great feminist movie. And they were fantastic. It was Lily Tomlin being very Lily Tomlin, very biting and funny, and Julia Garner being the great straight woman opposite that. And I really enjoyed it. It's really, really, it's like one of those great comedies where it's really, really funny, and then the sweetness, the sincerity sneaks up on you, Severance Season 2. I was late to Severance Season 1 by like a year or two, and now I'm late to Severance Season 2 by a few weeks. But I didn't want to watch it week to week. I just wanted to let them build up, and then I'll knock them all out. I'm about halfway through them now. And I'm really enjoying this season. I'm finding it easier to follow than the first one. The first one I was really confounded by and a lot of times. Whereas with Season 2, I'm really being able to piece the mystery together. And I really engaged with it in a way I wasn't really in Season 1. And the whole thing is such a perfect, like, sci-fi metaphor for, like, the work-life balance, you know, where the innie and the outie literally balance those two sides of your brain. And I'm just loving, like, Dan Erickson, the creator, is having so much fun, and Ben Stiller just developing the world building and figuring out, like, what's going on with Lumen, what's going on with the goats, you know. And it seems, unlike Lost, they seem to actually have answers to all these questions. They seem to know where they're going with it. So I'm here for it. Adolescence. This was fucking fantastic. It was, you know, one of the huge, I think it was like the second most watched show in Netflix history or something crazy like that. And I can see why. Like, it's, you know, it's 4-hour-long episodes. They fly by. Each one is its own distinctive thing, its own piece of the puzzle. And the long take thing, like I saw described as a gimmick. But I don't think it's a gimmick. I think it enhances the storytelling to make it that immersive, have it play out like a stage play where it's all in one take. It's, you know, in real time. That's the great thing about it, because like the first episode opens with this little 12-year-old boy who's seemingly innocuous, seemingly harmless, is arrested on suspicion of murder and brought to the police station. And the whole thing, you know, like as soon as he's arrested for murder in the first 5 minutes, you're hooked. You're like, did he do it? If he did, why and how and what are the circumstances? And where'd you go from there? Where'd you go from a 12-year-old being arrested for murder? And he gets in the van, they take him to the police station, and the real-time aspect of it made it feel so real and immersive, where he goes through, he's being read his rights, and he's going through, getting his fingerprints done, and all this stuff that might be skipped through, you know, might be just cut past in a traditional show, or at least shown in like a montage. You see it play out in real time, that he gets booked and put in a cell. It just makes it so real, you know? And as they were like questioning him and presenting him with more and more evidence, I was getting like anxiety, that like the walls were closing in, because like, I would never stab someone to death, I'd like to think, but could you just imagine being in that room, being presented with all this irrefutable evidence, and all you have is the phrase "no comment," that's all you have as a defense? It would be terrifying. I feel like your life's fucked. And it did a really good job of making you know, he keeps saying he didn't do it, and Stephen Graham, absolutely fantastic playing the dad. He doesn't want to believe his son could kill someone, and you don't want to believe it. You want to believe this kid is innocent, but you keep getting presented with more and more proof that he absolutely did do it. And there's the moment, you know, we're getting into spoiler territory now, or we may already be in spoiler territory. But there's the bit where they're showing the CCTV footage, and the kid kind of goes to touch his dad, and his dad recoils, like, get the fuck away, who are you? And then a kind of a second later he processes it, and then he grabs him, embraces him, and hugs him. And it was such a powerful little bit of acting from Stephen Graham. Like, all the awards he's going to win, that moment alone could have clinched it. And the kid, let me just get the kid's name, Owen Cooper, absolutely astoundingly great actor. Like, the third episode is he's talking to a criminal child psychologist for the whole episode. And I mean, it would be impressive enough that this little like 12-year-old kid learned an hour's worth of lines for one take. That's just him sitting at a table, but he makes that sitting at a table talking, he makes it captivating, and he switches between being friendly and affable and being like aggressive and almost violent, borderline violent. And it gets to the point where the psychologist is terrified, she's shaking, and you're shaking watching it. And you know, and it kind of, at that point, it's about 7 months after he's been arrested, and you see the toll of him staying in a place like this, surrounded by mentally unwell, violent kids. He's almost like a totally different kid than we met in episode 1, and it kind of shows the impact of these kinds of institutions, that the point is for rehabilitation, but it's made him a much darker person. And this kid Owen Cooper, like, you're watching, I felt like I was watching Al Pacino in the 70s, you know, I was watching like one of the greatest actors of all time, but he's like never acted before. This is just some kid they found in a school. And he's incredible, and he's got all the awards coming his way, I'm sure. And there's like the camera thing, the one take thing, it's never distracting, it's almost always immersive. And there's a couple of things, like when a kid jumps out the window at the school and the camera follows him out, and the detective runs around and the camera manages to track both of them. Or when Stephen Graham and the family get in the van and the camera settles in front of the windscreen, and I'm like, okay, they're about to drive off, where's the camera going? And they start driving, the camera stays where it is, it's somehow fixed on someone came in with a rig in 2 seconds and fixed this thing to the windscreen. So that was the only thing where it kind of distracted you, where it's like, how did they do that? But for the most part, you're just locked in. I thought it was an incredible feat of television, a masterpiece. I started it at like 2 a.m. I thought, like, I'll watch one episode and I'll go to bed. And I watched the first 3. I didn't get to sleep until like 6 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't put it down. I had to stop myself from watching the 4th one and finishing it that night. But it was gripping TV. Fant Four Stick was the Fantastic Four movie from 2015. I feel like it's like weird how it's happened every 10 years. The first one was 2005, then it was 2015, and now the new one's about to come out in 2025. Like, is there some contract somewhere that says if Fantastic Four movies the new Fantastic Four reboot has to be in a year ending in 5? This one's awful. This is the one that's like designed as a body horror David Cronenberg take on Fantastic Four, which is just a horrible idea to begin with. And they went with like the young YA version of the cast instead of just like making them, they should be older. Maybe Johnny can be a bit younger, but for the most part they should be like almost like middle-aged. You make them like kids, you make them like college kids, and it turns into the Young Avengers. But the actors are far from the worst problem with this. The worst problem with this is the tone that Josh Trank set, and then the reshoots that Fox did where they tried to salvage it and make it a more palatable movie, but they had to work with what they already had, and it's a fucking mess. Ironheart. I've seen the first, I think 3, or maybe in the middle of episode 3. I loved the comic. Not necessarily the original Brian Bendis run, but when Eve Ewing took over and could really get into like a black girl's perspective, it made it so much more unique and so much more engaging and emotional, and I love that. And I think the show's capturing a lot of that. The show's capturing a lot of that personality. I really like this MCU version of Riri. I really think she could have a bright future in the MCU, and I'm really enjoying the show. I think it's good so far. It's not like it's not blowing me away as like a masterpiece maybe, but it's got more idiosyncrasy and more personality and more energy than most of the other Marvel Disney shows. It's got like the first couple of episodes of Miss Marvel where it had a ton of personality and energy, and then it kind of dropped off. Ironheart has that in these first couple of episodes, and maybe that'll drop off too. I don't know, but I'm loving it so far. F1 this is the Formula 1 movie with Brad Pitt, very creatively titled. It's just like, why don't you just give a name, like a proper movie title name, like Days of Thunder, like it's so lazy, just call it F1. It's like if Tin Cup was called Golf, or A League of Their Own was called Baseball the movie. It's stupid. It just feels like corporate branding. It feels like they're trying to promote F1 instead of just tell a story, But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the film. It's feel good sports movie, typical sports movie stuff about the old washed up has-been has a comeback, and the young rookie begrudgingly grows to respect him, and they go from rivals to teammates, and it's all very solid. It's very predictable, and it's story-wise, it's nothing we've never seen before. And at the same time, it doesn't do anything exciting and new with the familiar formula the same way Elio did. But it's at the end of the day, it's Joseph Kosinski putting cameras on another fast vehicle. It's the same way he put cameras on a fighter jet and made a great cinematic spectacle in Top Gun Maverick. He does so here. It was amazing to see on a big screen those race sequences. So it's definitely worth checking out at the big screen, just for cameras mounted on cars going really fast around racetracks. And for Brad Pitt's smoldering charisma. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I rewatched Across the Spider-Verse, came to Netflix. It was one of my top 10 of the year, I think, when it came out, 2023. And it's fantastic. I mean, who would have thought they could actually do a sequel to Into the Spider-Verse that is bigger and more ambitious, but just as emotional, just as focused, and just as powerful. But they did. They pushed the visuals further, they pushed the animation further, but the relationships and the emotions and Miles as a character, they go deeper as well. Megan 2.0. I just watched this, just did a review of it, and I really liked it. I don't know why it's getting such negative reviews. I thought it was a blast. I had so much fun with it. I had a big smile on my face the whole film, and it works really well as an action movie. It kind of leaves the horror behind, but like the first one is both the first one and the second one work great as like campy comedies, and the first one is supposed to also be a horror film, but I was never like actually scared by it. But this one is an action film, and it really works as an action film. The action sequences are really well directed, and the stakes are always clear. The goals the characters have and the obstacles preventing them from getting those goals, it's all clear, and it's like just a solid action movie with this campy, crazy Megan comedy built on top of it. I loved it. I had so much fun. Black Sheep. This is a New Zealand horror comedy about sheep that get like infected with a virus or something that turns them into basically zombies, where they bite people and infect them and turn humans into sheeps, and it becomes like a werewolf thing where there's like even a copy of the shot in American Werewolf in London where David's nose stretches out when he transforms. There's something happens with that with a guy turning into a sheep, like an homage. And the whole thing was so silly, and it was like the gore was really, really effective, really well done, and like you actually believe the threat of these sheep, as ridiculous as that sounds. But it's like funny. It's like so stupidly funny. I thought it was really fun. Wiener-Dog. I just watched this and I absolutely loved it. I mean, it was the cast attracted me to it. It's like a who's who of like my favorite actors. It's like Danny DeVito, Greta Gerwig, Kieran Culkin, Tracy Letts, Julie Delpy, Ellen Burstyn, and but really the tone of it really was what got me. As much I love those actors and they're all great in it. But it was Todd Solondz, who I haven't seen a ton of his stuff, but I've immediately gone online to order some stuff on DVD and Blu-ray because I want to now watch as much of his stuff as I can get, because I loved this. It's like a really dark comedy. It's kind of like Oh Hazard Balthazar, or however you pronounce it, the Bresson movie. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm hopeless. But it's about like the abused donkey passing hand to hand between different owners. It was like that, but for a little sausage dog, where he starts off with this kid who's recovering from cancer. His dad gets him the dog, and then he feeds the dog a granola bar, and the dog shits all over the house, and they send him to be euthanized. But then Greta Gerwig is working at the vets, and she takes the dog home. That was a she. I think the dog's a girl. And then Greta Gerwig takes the dog on a road trip with Kieran Culkin. And then the dog runs off and ends up with Danny DeVito, who's like a screenwriting professor. And eventually winds up with Ellen Burstyn, who's like this old lady. And it was just really, really funny. Some really dark stuff happens along the way. But it's just these really sort of dry, understated little human interactions. Dealing with really dark subject matter, whether it's like drug addiction or terminal illness or mental illness or whatever it is. And this dog is just there observing it. And it's a really cute dog. So it's like fun to watch just for the dog. But the messy, complicated human lives around the dog almost gives you a new perspective of it, observing it from the dog's perspective. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was exactly my sense of humor, and it was one of those anthologies where every storyline is actually really interesting. And the last one's probably the least interesting, the one with Ellen Burstyn. As much as I love her, because she's just like a lonely old lady. But it was a blast. It was very dark, and won't be for everyone. But I loved it. So there you have everything I watched in June. There was some great stuff. 28 Years Later and Elio and Adolescence were a fucking masterpiece. Some stuff that might become like personal favorites of mine down the line. They might join those ranks. Grandma I thought was so lovely, and Wiener-Dog was hilarious. And some terrible stuff. The Pope's Exorcist was a piece of shit, and Bride Hard. It might be one of the worst films I've ever seen. Might be the worst film of the year. But yeah, I want to get off the stool because my fucking arse is killing me. But what have you all been watching this month? Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations, or if you've been watching some shit that you would advise to avoid. And yeah, I'll speak to you next month. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.